What are the diverse factors influencing and driving the widespread adoption of plant proteins? Welcome to the fourth episode of the VALPRO PATH podcast, where we discuss this topic. My name is Tamara Glicic-Krivoshia, coming from FoodSkill Hub, a VALPRO PATH partner that leads dissemination, communication, and exploitation activities of the project. Today, I am delighted to introduce our esteemed guest, Paul Vos, an expert in nutrition quality and health at Wageningen Food and Biobased Research. It is a pleasure to have you here, Paul.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Also, Paul is the coordinator of the Giant Leaps project funded under the Horizon Europe program as well as the VALPRO PATH project. And it is also focusing on plant-based proteins. So we have an expertise in this field as well. Paul, since you're an expert in nutrition quality and health, how do nutritional considerations impact the decision-making process for consumers when adopting plant proteins, and how can these factors be optimized and changed maybe?
Yes, thank you. That's an excellent question, and also quite a hard one to answer, I think. So it is clear from literature that plant-based diets can have beneficial health effects. There are several more epidemiological studies showing that there can be health benefits related to plant-based diets. But I think it's important to also distinguish that plant-based diets are something else than, for instance, meat or dairy alternatives that are based on plant-based protein sources, where, well, a plant-based diet is not necessarily the same as I'd say meat or dairy alternatives, which in the Giant Leaps project we are working on. So we are working on both I guess the product level as well as on the diet level. And I think, well, it's important to take into account a range of factors. So first, I guess consumers may have all kinds of associations or reasons to be interested in plant-based diets and or products. Health being one of them, but not necessarily being the only thing that they're interested in. And I guess so for our project and for research in general in this area, it is very important to understand what aspects of plant-based diets really are linked to health benefits, so that we can try to make optimal use in that also when working on, for instance, products that are based on plant protein sources, which are meat or dairy alternatives or other products that can be easily used and incorporated into current diets. Now there's many things to say about this topic. One thing that we can already say based on research that has been done within the Giant Leaps project is that for consumers, often these different elements that relate to choices regarding well, meat or plant-based diets and products related to that. And they can relate to health, they can relate to sustainability elements and many others. And what has happened within the Giant Leaps project is that research has been done within Switzerland to understand consumers' expectations in relation to either animal-based products or products based on alternative proteins. And consumer perceptions have been investigated, and here it shows that expectations related to, for instance, the healthiness, as well as the sustainability elements, as well as, for instance, naturalness, and also taste and other aspects are very much related to each other. So it is actually very difficult to distinguish only the aspects that consumers, or the expectations that consumers have in relation to health, because it's so far, based on the research that has been done within Giant Leaps, it was actually found that all these factors are very much correlated. In a pilot study that was done by the group of ETH Zurich, which is led by Professor Michael Sigrist, and so who have done a pilot study with Swiss consumers, and which will be replicated in different regions across Europe to also understand how these consumer expectations differ across different regions in Europe. So I guess just understanding what the, I'd say, nutritional considerations are for consumers, and how that is separate from other expectations and considerations to choose plant-based products rather than traditional animal protein-based products. I guess that is a complex issue, but it's very important to understand this well in order to make a switch to more plant-based diets. And this is what we aim to work on within the Giant Leaps project, and where we aim to understand not just the consumer aspect, but all relevant aspects that play into, I'd say, in the end, reaching diets that are most sustainable, or that find the right balance between sustainability and health impact in the long run. So we focus on consumer aspects. We also focus on technological feasibility and innovations, so to make sure that alternative proteins can actually end up in products that can be consumed at scale, so that there's accessibility and availability of these products. We focus on safety, because of course it's a condition that these kind of products must be safe. We focus on the health aspects, so more the positive health impacts, for instance, relating to protein quality, but also to other nutrients that can be provided by plant-based or other alternative proteins. And we focus on the sustainability elements. And in order to understand how either plant-based protein sources or other alternative protein sources can be used optimally in diets, we think we need to take into account all these different elements in an integrated assessment. And this is what we aim to do within the Giant Leaps project, which is I think our main ambition, to make this integrated assessment and then try to define what future diets could look like that are optimized for this combination of sustainability and health impacts. And maybe I should say, add here that the focus of Giant Leaps is therefore very much on the protein aspect, but of course, there's many more nutrients at play in the health effects of plant-based products and dietary sources.
You've mentioned something interesting, that the research study for consumer acceptance has been done in Switzerland. So regarding this, do you see variations in the adoption of plant proteins across different demographic segments or pedoclimatic regions, for example? Do different countries respond different to plant proteins?
Yeah, so what I should emphasize is that so the Giant Leaps project has only started just over a year ago, and it's a 4-year project in total. It's a very large project, by the way, with 34 partners. So lots of things are ongoing, and we're still relatively in the early phase of the project. And therefore, the study that I refer to is a pilot study in understanding consumer perceptions and consumer behavior. And this was therefore the pilot study that was executed in Switzerland. And similar studies will be replicated across different regions in Europe to try to have an understanding of the north, east, south, and west regions of Europe where perceptions may differ. So this is a first, let's say, important aspect that we still need to look into, how geographic differences may play a role in consumer perceptions. What has also become clear in this research, and I guess this is not so much surprising, but how consumers identify, whether they identify themselves as omnivores versus flexitarians, very much affects how they view plant-based products and also other alternative protein sources versus more traditional animal-based protein products. So obviously flexitarians, as they identify themselves, have a more positive view on, for instance, plant-based protein sources compared to animal protein sources, and vice versa for omnivores. However, this is not the only aspect. Also, for some of the considerations, for instance, on the attitudes towards traditional animal-based proteins and products, gender and age also play a role in the perceptions that were found. But also here, this is really a pilot study. It was done in over 1,000 subjects, so it's already a sizable study, but it will be replicated in 4 countries and 4 regions of Europe. And therefore, we will need to wait for those results to get an even more in-depth insight.
Thank you. So we are looking forward to the results of the study. Nevertheless, it is common knowledge that plant proteins have certain health benefits when incorporated into a diet. Are the consumers aware of these benefits?
Well, so from the research that has been done so far within the project, we cannot really say at this moment. So what I explained before is that in the pilot study that was done, expectations towards the healthiness of products was very much linked to then also, for instance, the expectation of those products being more sustainable, also being more natural, etc. So there, based on this type of research, we cannot really say. What we also have found from other research that has been done in another part of the project and executed mostly by colleagues from Wageningen University, in combination also with or in collaboration with other partners in the project. They have looked at current dietary patterns across Europe to try to really understand what the current diets are in the EU and what the protein sources are within those diets. And there it was found that already now you can identify a small part of the population that consumes what has been defined as plant-forward diets, so which contain more plant-based foods. Also, sometimes already some meat or dairy alternatives that are being consumed that can be identified in the consumption patterns. And for instance, here we can see that females are, for instance, more represented within this small population than males. So here, there's also some correlation with, I'd say, the type of consumer and the segmentation there. But well, I guess as I said, so far we cannot really, we do not have insight yet on how consumers understand the nutritional benefits of plant-based diets. And I think overall, also still the science there needs to progress, since it is clear from I'd say plant-based diets that there can be obvious advantages in having more fiber intake, being related to, for instance, increased polyphenol intake and levels, more whole grain intake, and also related fiber intake, more fruits, vegetables, nuts, and legumes. So all these elements are clearly identified as positive in a nutritional sense, and also related to lower saturated fat and salt intake. However, how this works on a diet level versus how that relates to individual products that are being developed, so like meat and dairy alternatives, I think there is still a lot of knowledge to. And this is also at least what we try to work on within the Giant Leaps project, to work on products that have that are, for instance, less processed, contain more of the natural nutrients that come with the plant or other alternative protein sources, that therefore have a better nutritional profile, and hopefully therefore also have similar benefits and less of the detriments, I guess, that I just described. So on using the plant-based sources with the benefits there, and less of the detriments of, for instance, saturated fat and salt. So I think this is important. However, since we already need to gain more knowledge here from the science perspective, I think we need to be very careful in trying to or I'd say our expectation of consumer knowledge of these kind of topics, since this is quite complex. Nutrition overall is quite a complex topic, and it is well known that overall consumers often have a limited understanding of the complexities, and therefore we should also make this as easy as possible to understand and make sure to communicate well. And I guess this is also something that is a topic for the Giant Leap project to try at the end of the project to communicate the findings to a broad range of audiences, including consumers, so that they can understand the potential benefits of plant-based diets and new products that are being developed.
Okay, so I think that we can agree that plant-based products have nutritional benefits, just that we need to communicate them well to the audience. Paul, are there any ongoing initiatives or studies at the Wageningen Food and Biobased Research at this point that are uncovering novel factors that could drive further the adoption of plant proteins?
Yeah, maybe just to come back to one thing you just mentioned, so the health benefits of plant-based sources, I fully agree. So that these are there, but it must also be said that that plant-based foods are not always healthy. So there can be plant-based foods that are unhealthy. For instance, if they're highly processed, or if they are high in sugars or fat. So I think this is also something that we need to take into account, and therefore be careful in how we communicate about the benefits of plant-based foods and diets in the end, so that we really focus on the health and the healthy products and the healthy plant-based sources, and make sure that we therefore work towards healthy diets, which absolutely is there in the potential is there, but we need to make sure that we really work then towards healthy diets. With that said, I guess there are many different topics that we are working on within Wageningen at Wageningen Food and Biobased Research, but also other parts of Wageningen University and Research. Just to mention a few, there is a project ongoing with involvement of my colleague Diederik Esser, that focuses on trying to understand really the health impact of consumption of meat and dairy alternatives. So trying to answer also a part of the question that I already touched on. So what are health impacts of consuming these types of products, also on a longer term, and comparing that to intake of more conventional type of products. So trying basically to understand impact from products and how this relates then to overall health impact. Other aspects, obviously, I haven't mentioned yet, but very important for consumers, I think there's no doubt about that, are sensory aspects of products. So whether they are meat alternatives, dairy alternatives, or other products. As has been published, for instance, by our work package leader on the consumer insights, Professor Michael Sigrist, we need to work towards having both price and taste and sensory parity with traditional products when we develop meat. And within Wageningen, for instance, there is also a project ongoing with involvement of my colleague, Dr. Monique Vingerhoets, on trying to define meat analogs that have improved sensory quality, and therefore to understand really the different aspects of texture, juiciness, and other aspects that are really important in the overall perception of meat analogs. So to improve their really on the taste and other sensory aspects of meat analogs. I guess what is also important is to really understand how research translates to real life settings. So this is another area in which Wageningen has done research also already in the past, to also try to improve on methods to do this kind of research, so that it's not just the consumption of individual products, but also actually the context and the environment in which these products are consumed can impact how products are being perceived. And therefore, it's very important that the way in which these kinds of tests are run are then, I'd say, predictive and similar to real life settings. And so this is also a topic of research within Wageningen Food and Biobased Research, to define, for instance, semi-real life testing environments that can be used in research, so that there's an optimal translation of the results to the real life setting. And yet so there's many things to talk about here, but also very important aspects, which, for instance, our own group works on, is to understand better really the digestibility of plant-based protein sources, but also, for instance, potential allergenicity issues. These are all aspects that relate more to health impacts, either on the positive side or potentially also on the negative side, to try to predict, for instance, in an early stage already from in silico work or in vitro lab tests, whether protein sources have the potential to be allergenic, whether, for instance, people that have a current allergy can react to them, or whether new allergies can occur when you would consume these kind of protein sources. But also to understand how protein sources, so either ingredients or whole products, can be digested, to try to predict that with lab tests in vitro before you go really to human studies, and to understand this whole process better. This is something that we work on. It's also something that is really an important part of the Giant Leaps project overall. So these are just a few of the topics that we are working on, and there's much more work going on at Wageningen, but just to give you a flavor.
Excellent. As 2024 is here, what advice would you like to give to the VALPRO community, to the individuals that are probably looking to incorporate more plant proteins into their diets? Should they go for it?
They should absolutely go for it. I think it's very important to eat more plant-based foods. So either for your health or for the health of the planet, which is in the end also related to human health. I'm very much convinced of that. And so therefore, I fully encourage people to do that more. I think eating more whole foods-based meals and diets is obviously the best way to go. So to use fresh produce, to cook with that, to make meals based on them, that is the best way to increase your intake of, for instance, legumes, nuts, seeds, whole grain products, fresh vegetables, which are all important sources of healthy nutrients, and for which I guess the relation to health benefits have been best described in literature. Still, also convenience is an important factor for many people, and or trying to incorporate plant-based products into your current dietary habits. And therefore, I also very much support people using more meat and dairy alternatives to have more sustainable meals, and also to make sure that you focus on the nutrition declaration and the labels, to also focus on the healthiness of those products. And I think we will also see many developments there in the coming years. So from projects such as Giant Leaps, as well as many other projects working on this to make these kind of products increasingly healthy, hopefully also to bring the price down, which will also stimulate the use of these kind of products by consumers. So either way, I guess the best way always is to use whole foods and fresh produce, but also by using more meat and dairy alternatives, and to incorporate those into healthy diets. I very much encourage people to do so.
Thank you very much for this insightful discussion. Dear VALPRO PATH community, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Exciting topics are on the horizon, so please stay tuned, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much.